Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another week of the Better Events podcast. This is Mary Davidson, one of your co hosts. And in today's episode, we are recapping a little bit about the 2024 Better Events Conference. But really, this was a live podcast episode that we recorded during the conference all about growth. We talk about personal growth, business and career growth, financial growth, and we answer questions from our conference attendees. This is a really fun episode. It's a little different. We recorded it live during the conference to release as a podcast episode. So you'll see that. It's going to be fun. There's a lot of energy, and we hope that you enjoy it.
Welcome to the Better Events Podcast. Join two event strategists, Logan Clements and Mary Davidson, who believe we can all create, host, and attend better events. In this podcast, you will learn about event strategy and actions that you can use today as an event host, planner, or manager. Hear directly from the people who are creating innovative and inspiring events today and tomorrow, and grow your business along the way. Now, let's get started, and thanks for listening to the Better Events Podcast.
Hi, friends. We are recording this live from the Better Events Conference. And just to give you a little window behind the scenes, Mary and I think are running on pure adrenaline right now between today's conference day of virtual and yesterday's in-person day. I also feel like I've had like 15 coffees. So we are just, we are feeling the pressure, I feel like, of doing a live episode, but this was also so much fun last year. We had so much great content today and yesterday. So we're hoping to bring some of that inspiration into today's episode. And Mary, while we have had an entire 2 days of conference, I don't feel like we need a conversation starter, but let's not break with format, okay? We've got our conversation starter for this live episode. Mary, if you could hire a famous person or character to be on your event team and work with you on an event, who would it be and why?
Oh my gosh, good question. And yes, I think like enough with the conversation starters. People asked for them, they liked them, and we just were like, yes, let's do it all the time. So we were extra. No, it's been super fun. And so my answer to this question, I think I'm going to go, I've thought about this with Mrs. Incredible because she's got stretchy arms. And so you won't have to walk as much. She can grab, because you're bringing somebody onto your team, right? So she can grab all the things. A mic is missing. She can grab it and bring it somewhere. You don't even have to do that. So that's my answer. What about you?
You know, it says something about our industry that you picked a superhero and I picked Hermione Granger because I feel like superhero and magic are things that our industry would love. Because similar to you said, pick up all the things. I was like, one, Hermione's very, very smart. Sorry, Harry and Ron. I would pick Hermione over both of you. And she would probably come up with some kind of a spell or something that would make loadout like that. Like we would just be like, loadout's done. Because I feel like at the part of an event, that is the part that I'm the most exhausted and would love to go the fastest. Setup would nice to go fast, but definitely for like loadout.
I think that's a great answer because yes, that's setup or teardown is the hardest part sometimes. So I love it. This is wonderful. Fun conversation starter. For those, this is a live podcast. So this is happening during the Better Events Conference. So please let us know in the chat also, or if you're listening to this episode later in our Spotify Q&A answers, who you would bring on site to your event. We want to know. So we're going to talk about why we chose this topic today, and it's very timely with our conference. We're doing a deep dive into growth, and so we are doing this because you asked and we listened. In your registration questions for the conference, we asked you if you had questions that you wanted to share, and they have to do, many of them, with growth. And so what we've done is we've taken the theme, and then we've also wrapped them into certain categories that we're going to talk about today that have to do with your questions. And if you asked a question that you don't hear answered, we save those up for episodes later on. So thank you so much for adding some questions in your registration form. But we do hope that this episode kind of wraps it all up with a nice bow. We've talked about growth for the last 2 days, but we're going to wrap it all up today. So we're going to jump right into it. And we love to start basic on the podcast, as you know. And so we're just going to do a little check-in. 2 days of the conference, talking a lot about growth. Logan, what's your current mindset on growth? And how has your perspective maybe shifted?
This is a great question, Mary. Those that were in person with us in Tacoma yesterday know that I said this. I didn't come up with this idea on my own. It was from another podcast. One of the reasons I love podcasts so much because they can spark different ideas and different things resonate. And that podcast host had said that growth is messy. And I don't think I'd ever thought of it that way. And then I think hearing Evan Dunphy's keynote today, even for the second time, I just realized, like, I think we think growth is, we know it's hard, but I don't know if we acknowledge that it can be messy. And so I think I'm just trying to embrace some of that mess. And then the main thing with how it shifted, I wouldn't say necessarily, I feel like the mess is maybe the last 2 days I've been more embracing that. But in general, I've really embraced in the last like 2 years, I would say that my growth and how I feel like I've grown looks different than how other people might identify growth. And I'm okay with that. I think when I first started, I felt a lot of that tension and that friction that I wasn't growing traditionally, like trying to hire people or do things in a way that maybe others were doing it. And it has been very liberating to admit that maybe my version of growth is not your version of growth, Mary, or someone else's version of growth. And that has been really great to just kind of get to sit in that and realize that I can truly make whatever I want growth. How about you? What's your current mindset?
I mean, I agree with everything that you said. I think this has definitely taught me that truly growth is something different to everyone, like you said. But I was sitting in one of our sessions, the Growing Through the Seasons of Life session. I was like really listening. And I just thought, like, a thought crossed my mind. I was like, shoot, I really need to figure out what growth actually means to me, which is like, that's what the whole thing has been about. But I'm going to have to take it all in, everything that we talked about, and like sit with it and then like answer that question for myself later because I'm just, soaking in all the information. So I think that's what I realized is like, I actually don't know that I know. I think I need to even to work more to figure what that looks like for right now. And then also just like, I think my growth mindset is shifting toward growing as a person. Like I want to become a better leader, which and then help other people, which actually grows the business, which is also my goal. But those are like different kinds of growth, which kind of you all grow together, I guess, if you will. So that's something that I think I've realized the last couple days.
And you have plenty of time to figure out
Yeah.
what your version of growth is. And as we know, it can change, right? And different seasons, like that panel talked about, maybe our definition now is different than 5 years from now. Mary, what another question we have here is, what does success mean to you now, and how has that definition changed over time?
These are like some hard hitters right at the beginning. I said we start off basic, but here we are. Uh, Success, my idea of success, similar to growth, has definitely changed over time. I think like growing up, success meant like nice things and fun vacations. And then maybe that shifted a little bit, like in college, to like a solid job and a steady paycheck, which is absolutely not the case when you're working for yourself because cash flow. And so that's kind of been interesting. But I think now, really, success to me is freedom. And I've talked about that before a lot, probably on the podcast. We're at the time of year where people are talking about their words for the year. And I think like freedom is just my word for life. Like it's like my life goal and the word that I always kind of shoot for. But similarly, I think freedom means something different to everyone as well. But that's something that really matters to me. So I think that's what success is to me now. And so as you can see, that's really shifted. What about you, Logan? What does success look like for you now?
Yeah, I think it's the same. I mean, in the idea that I'm maybe not necessarily the word freedom for me, but more just I'm crafting like my definition of success. I've had multiple people who tell me that my travel schedule is their nightmare. And that used to bother me a lot because I was like, what am I doing wrong? Is something wrong with me that I don't think this is, too much or a lot? And so I feel like similar to our definitions of growth, my definition of success has also evolved and become more personalized because this is something too I talked about yesterday in person, but like my goal is not to do more. I don't want to do more events. If I happen to do one or two more events a year, sure, that's fine. But I'm not like, success to me is not me climbing this mountaintop to just do more, 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 and more. My word for next year is refine. I'm trying to get better at what I like to do, and I think I'm getting there. I've had some good reflection time at my annual retreat I did in November, which would be a pro tip for you listeners. I love doing my retreat in November. So then I have a month to just like sit in some of the things I thought about during my retreat versus some years I've had to do it in December. And then I feel like January, it's almost too late to implement some things because I'm already back in the grind of working. But that was really, I think, interesting for me to sit in the fact that like, I'm okay with having slow seasons, I guess. Like right now I've had this conference and like one other event client I'm working on, and that's okay because I'm to the Seasons of Life panel. I'm going through a pretty rough personal time right now. And I've been I've never felt more successful with the fact that I know, like, I'm able to step back and be present and be there for my partner and my family and still be running a business. And that is something that I think 5 years ago me would never have been like, oh, that's successful, is not working that many events in November and December. So I think it's both daunting and exciting that it can constantly evolve. And I'm sorry, listeners, if you were hoping to have one nugget of the answer of this is success. But if you listen to this podcast, you know that's not what we're going to say.
Right. Yeah. Everything. I think I see a trend. It's like, well, it depends. But that's just kind of how it goes sometimes. So we have our last hard hitter that's going to kick us off into other questions. But Logan, what is your biggest win and fail, maybe recently, that you can share with listeners? And this was a question someone specifically asked. So thanks for asking the hard questions.
I know, no easy ones here. Gosh, we're at the end of the day, folks. No. Yeah, for biggest, well, I feel like biggest win was, and I've talked to some folks, they know, like, I have a certain amount of income that I'm looking for out of what I call pillar clients, which just mean I need, in the past, I've had one client who was at this like several tens of $1,000 level. And I was like, wow, if I had a couple of these, that would help give me some financial stability to then take on smaller projects and smaller clients. Since again, I'm one person and I don't want to do 100 events a year. And 2 years ago, I got two of those. And then for 2024, I'd made a goal to have three, what I call pillar clients, from a revenue perspective. And I had this really cool thing where in May, I had confirmed that I was going to hit all three. And that was just like a really cool but weird win to be like, wow, I'm used to the hustle and the grind and the like, I don't know what next month's going to be like, or I kind of know. And so in May, all of a sudden I was like, I'm going to hit my financial goals for the year. And it's May. Granted, I hadn't received the cash yet, but so that was really a cool feeling. And I think then gave me some breathing room to get to be more selective. And I didn't know what the rest of this year was going to look like and the kind of what I'm going through right now. So I'm very fortunate that that happened. And from a failure perspective, I guess it's not even this year. It was more at the end of last year. I talked about on the podcast, but I did a multi-sport event and I had what I still to this day will say was one of the top 5 worst days of my career. And a lot of it wasn't out of my own control. It was like, if everything wrong could have happened, it happened while I was producing an event, a sporting event, to the point that I went to the bathroom and was like, should I cry? Probably not going to. And I literally went, it's not going to help right now. And I went back out there. And that was my like one time I stepped away from this desk for 15 hours. The minute I got out of the venue, I sat in the car with my MC as we ride home. And he turned to me and he's like, I know many producers would have cried or screamed or both by this point. And he was in his 60s. And I was like, I'm very thank you for saying that. Cause I was like, I really felt like and I'm not a screamer, but I was like, I was almost at the verge of tears, but you know, I knew that it wouldn't help the team and we just powered through. The minute I walked through my hotel room door, folks, I ugly cried, like awful. And I was like, I have to put what happened today in a report, in an email. And I went, it's impossible. Now, after I cried, I called my partner. We talked about it. I took a shower. And yes, don't worry, I was able to put it all in a report. And after that, I felt like I was wearing Kevlar, like any event experience for the rest of that project. I was like, can't be as worse as day one. It really can't. So very long-winded answer for you, Mary, but I feel like this is a deeper question.
It is a deeper question, but also like congratulations because you made it through. It's always like, easier looking back, but I think those are great. Mine are not really connected, but I was thinking about it and it's hard to identify, to be honest. So I think it's a good question for us all to reflect on. But as I've shared many times, one of my not strengths is time management. But what I've gotten better at this year is responding quickly, which has to do with time. So I'm going to take it as a win. Generally, if you send me an email and I've taken a little while, this is a generalization, but generally I've started to respond more quickly to the point that lately I've had people respond back and say, wow, thanks for responding so quickly. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I've never had anybody say that to me before. So I'm finally that person and I'm thrilled about it. So that's a huge win for me personally. So that's something that I would say. My fail is actually very specific. So I'm going to share it, but it's weirdly specific. I had the opportunity to exhibit at a local chamber event. I signed up for it. I wanted to exhibit and I thought it'd be a good opportunity. So my fail is that when you're exhibiting, just freaking take the time to follow up with the contacts that you make. I think we know this. We as planners teach exhibitors to do this, but I was exhibiting. I haven't emailed anybody from it. It was in June and I feel so lame about it. And so that was a huge fail because as we're talking about growth, we'll talk about it more, but like one of my goals is to grow my business. So when you participate in activities like this, obviously it just makes sense that you need to take the time to follow through. So that was a fail this year. I probably should have maybe started with the fail, ended on the win, but we learn.
Well, and I joke, I'm like, isn't there a day where you can be like, it's like email forgiveness day? Like maybe the first week of January, you're like, this is overdue, but hi, we met at this June event. I feel like you just pick one day and you bang out all the emails.
Maybe I'll just wait till next year and I'll be like, we met exactly 1 year ago.
That'd be an interesting take. I mean, again, you'll probably get a couple people
Yeah.
to respond to you, but
Yes.
shifting more now into personal growth. Again, this came from some of you attendees, this question. Mary, how do you define balance in your life between personal well-being and professional growth?
This is another hard question. I don't think balance is like, I guess, what is balance? That's my question. Yeah. So for me, I would say like just take the break. And like I've literally had moments, I think we've all been, you get in your focus mode and you're like, and you're really, really in it. And I've just had like my husband will come in and be like, time to get up. And I like physically time to get up. I'm like, oh my God, I hate it, but also thank you because I just get so in it sometimes. So balance to me means breaks. And that's kind of like a silly example. But one of the things that like I've noticed for myself is that I do feel like my energy level is different than what other people have. I just feel like I have less of it, but maybe that's just a me thing. I don't know. And so I really truly have to take breaks throughout the day to get through it. And so I feel like there's this like daily fight about taking the breaks and trying to achieve balance. But I definitely think that it's not something like balance. I don't think you should take a break like at the end of the event or at the end of the week or when you go on a vacation or at the end of the year, which I think a lot of us actually do. We save it for the end of the year. I think we need breaks throughout the actual day to achieve balance. And that is my personal take on it. That's what I'll say. What about you, Logan?
Yeah, I think balance as a term really just stresses me out.
Yeah.
Like, because I just think it's so hard to be perfectly balanced. You're actually looking at a scale to like get it perfectly balanced. It's satisfying, but it took a lot of effort. And so I know that panel that we had about seasons in life. I feel like that's how I more think it's like, what season am I in? And those seasons can be like seasons like on the calendar. They can also be, you could have a year as a season or 5 years as a season, or even a week as a season. Because I think for me, I know I'm very much in a season where work is really important to me. And it's something that I choose. And when I say work, that's a broad term. I would say this podcast falls under my work umbrella, even though it's something we do for fun. But it is something that I also choose to do sometimes on a weekend, on a Sunday, late at night. And that's just something that like I'm in a season right now where I can do as much work as I want. And so, Mary, to your point about breaks, I hear you. I want to do it. I know myself to know that if I go on a walk while the sun is out at like 1 p.m., I'm such a more productive person. And yet, while I'm in front of my laptop doing things, I'm like, what do you mean I don't have 30 minutes to go on a walk? Like, I have no time. And not realizing that, yes, while I'm doing it, I realize, oh, yes, this is how creative my brain works. And I can think of new ideas. And so it's always easier said than done. So the way I'm doing balance this year, I feel like, and I'm going to hopefully continue into next year, has been just realizing that I'm energized by exercise, by moving my body. So by going to workouts and trying to do this, even when I'm on the road, my rule has been if I just walk on the treadmill for 10 minutes, I can usually get a good body scan in those 10 minutes of like, that was it. We only had 10 minutes. Or then I'm like, okay, I'm already moving my body. What else do I want to do? Do I want to lift or do I want to keep walking and just do a 45-minute walk while I watch a crime show? And I had always thought, well, that would decrease my energy by working out. And it's actually counter to what I have believed in the past is I actually get energized by moving. So that's how I try to make sure I'm prioritizing movement. My goal has always been 3 times a week or 3 times a week. And I'm going to keep that into 2025. And I feel like that's made it, more of a habit for me.
I love that. Definitely a good tip. And this question that we just answered stemmed from some attendees asking about just the idea of collaboration or having friends in the industry. And then someone else mentioned just like making valuable connections and how valuable that is to them. And I think a lot of that has to do with your personal growth in the industry. And so thank you for asking those questions. And now we're going to shift into another category, financial. There were a lot of financial questions. We've had some sessions during this conference about financial things, and so hopefully some of those have been addressed. But we're just going to answer a couple of them here today. So the first one, Logan, is what's one investment that you made in your career or business that has paid off significantly?
Before I answer your question, Mary, I have to shout out in the chat that I have a kindred spirit of Sue Councilman also finds crime shows relaxing. Thank you. I'm not alone. So for finances, for something that paid off significantly, I'm going to give you two. One is business. One's a little more business, but personal. The business one would be an accountant. I've said this before. I'll say it again. And by it, it has paid off significantly, maybe not financially because I have to pay taxes and I now pay this person to help me every month and every quarter reconcile. But it has paid off from a stress level significantly. I am not stressed about taxes. I have this person in my corner every quarter who says, hey, based on what you made this quarter, here's what you should pay in taxes. I pay estimated taxes. Come tax time, they triple check things for me and then let me know what I owe, not just for federal and state for federal taxes, but also like city tax for things that here in Seattle. And that has just made me feel so much more zen. That used to stress me out so much. So an accountant, highly, highly recommend. I know, Mary, I think I got you on the train with my accountant. So, if you guys need a recommendation, she's great. And then another one that I would say is a travel credit card. I currently use a Delta American Express as my business travel credit card. And that has paid off so well of just getting, because I travel so much on the road, of getting upgrades, of having free checked bags, of getting access to lounges, like certain little perks that have made travel so much less stressful that unfortunately you're looking at a Delta girly. I don't like flying other airlines because they treat me so nicely. But that is something you have to invest in. There is a fee I pay every year to have access to those perks, but it's 1,000 times worth it. If you are someone who travels more than 4 times a year, I would look into something like this, whether it's for your business, work, or even just personally.
Controversy. I'm an Alaska Airlines girly, Logan.
I know, that's why we can't fly together, Mary.
Yep, we can't. We need our benefits on our own airlines. But those are some really great tips. I was thinking about mine, and honestly, it was kind of funny because I don't know that I can identify. I can tell you what investments did not pay off significantly. So I'm trying to like what's actually good. I mean, I don't know. I think associations can be great, like if you utilize them. And so sometimes I'm like, like I could go either way because it's hard. We're busy. And so sometimes it's hard to like fulfill the value of a membership. But I think attending is definitely a good investment. But something that I thought of, I'm like going kind of back in the archives for this one, but I went back to school right before the pandemic and I got my MBA. And I'm not saying everybody has to go do this, but I think that is an investment in my career and my business because it gave me the confidence to start my business. I did it right before I started my business. Once again, I don't think everybody has to do that, but what it actually was, I think, was that it proved to myself that I could do it. I could do something hard. And from that, I think that's like why I had the confidence to do my business, not because of the knowledge I gained. In fact, I've forgotten a lot of what I've learned, to be totally honest. But it's the fact that I did something hard. And I think we can all relate to that. We can grow from doing hard things. And so that's kind of where I shifted this question in my brain.
I think it's a good shift. I like it. You're getting a lot of shout outs. You've got a lot of Alaska Airlines girlies and guys in the chat.
Awesome.
They're
we'll go on a trip together and we'll all have a great time without Logan.
Honestly, I'll meet you there. I'll meet you there. That's fine. We don't have to fly together, like I said. Okay, last financial question we have is how can event professionals avoid the feast or famine cycle when it comes to finances?
Yeah, this question is hard. I mean, Logan and I don't pretend to be experts in all the things. We're just sharing our thoughts. That's a podcast. And so I don't know the answer to this question. And I think like that is genuinely my answer. It's sort of the nature of the game. It's feast or famine. We've talked about it a couple times over the last 2 days of the conference. It's come up. And so I just think like one of the things that you could possibly do, and this might be controversial, I think, is to diversify it. That's a goal that I have at least. Feast or famine, seasonal work, diversify, especially if you have cash flow things because you have people to pay. That's when it really comes in, I think. I wish I was like, well, I don't wish I was by myself, but if I was like a solopreneur, then maybe the breaks would be okay. But like I'm also constantly like having to pay paychecks, and I'm doing that on purpose. I set my business up this way. So feast or famine is a real concern that will keep me up at night in this situation. So I would say diversify.
Yeah, I think anytime you can diversify, it's always smart. I think my 2 cents here is I have this framed by my desk is just there will always be another gig, another event. I feel like I saw some version of this and then I printed it out and put it.
Unless there's not.
Mary, but there will be. That's the thing. There will always be another gig. There's always another event. Yes, maybe there are seasons where it's going to be hard for you to make connections and meet people, but I truly believe this that there is enough work to go around. That's why we love this community over competition. I know Mary jokes there, but there truly are enough events. And then one other like practical tip that has helped me personally as a solopreneur, and it might help you if you're a freelancer, would be I first started tracking money coming in, but I would track it based on when I was invoicing them. And I have since in the last 2 years started a tracker that now takes into account all my different clients' payment terms because I have some big agencies I work with that are like net 45. And so now I'm actually tracking when things come in and having a 12-month projection. So that has helped me better understand because I've had months where I'm like, wow, I worked a lot, but that person took 4 months to pay me. So now it's like, I worked a lot, but where's the cash? And other months where maybe I'm not actually executing gigs, but because I did the work earlier, that money's coming in. And so that has helped me just get a better idea of what my slow months are because they're not truly slow months for work. They're slow months for cash flow.
Yes.
And that's been really helpful. And I just use like an Excel spreadsheet to do that. I know there's software that can help you too, but that's just how my brain needs to see it is laid out in cells.
That's a great tip. Honestly, Logan, thank you for ending on a note of hope. Yes, that is a wonderful tip. Thank you. Okay, so that was financial. Now we're going to shift into business or events growth. So, Logan, what are some strategies that you have found most effective for growing your business while staying true to your values? So, solid question.
Yeah. I think one that's been helpful for me, and I did this right when I started my business, is tracking my time. And I'm not trying to make my business transactional, but I have found so much of what we charge in the event industry is so arbitrary. What's expensive to one client is dirt cheap to another. And so I need some constant no matter what I'm charging. And so tracking my time has been so helpful for that. I started out in a Google spreadsheet doing it. I now use Toggle, Toggl, and I use the free version just to track my time. Some days I'm tracking like to the minute exactly as I switch between tasks. And other days when I'm busy, I just go back and I try to get it within 15 minutes estimates of what I did. And then at the end of the year, I actually go back and reconcile what I thought the event was or how much I charged. Here's all the hours I worked. What did my actual hourly rate come out to? And that has really helped me better improve my revenue margins, but also start to see where I'm trading my time. And fun fact, guys, some of my sports events, when you do the hourly calculation, man, they're not great. I'll give you that. But I love them. So I'm going to keep them around. But some of these, that's not where the money is. So tracking your time, I think, is really interesting. And then as a business owner, just trying to incorporate inflation into my quotes. So even if I'm repeating an event, and Mary, you and I have talked about this, is even if you repeat the event and maybe it's less work because you've done it before, if they were to find a new you, that person would have to use all that time. So making sure I'm still charging what I charged the year before if I'm rendering the same service, but then also factoring in like your client's expecting an increase, not a 50% increase, but maybe inflation, 5-10% increase. That is normal. And you're not a bad person for trying to increase it by that much. So those are my 2 strategies.
Yeah, one of the things that I really liked from the conference is the CEO Day workshop that we did in person. And that was for anyone. It's just the name, like you're the CEO of something. Oh, it could be your career, your life, your business, something, your events. And so I think having that check-in with yourself, I used to so CEO Day is a phrase that I've heard for a while. I don't know about you all. And it's something I was never super on board with. I'm like, okay, like, sure. But then I did it. And it was awesome, I have to say. I first started doing it a couple years ago. And then I remember, Logan, you've been doing it for longer. I texted you and I was like, what are the questions that you ask yourself every so often? And I did that. I sat down on like a nice summer day and I did it. And it was awesome. And so I think my point is just trying to stay true to your values, you kind of need to have that check in with yourself to reevaluate, like, what are your values at this time? And what do you really want? And so I think dedicating the time to be able to do that every so often. I think, Logan, do you do monthly CEO days? I'll probably do them twice a year at this point, but it's really helpful.
Yeah, I do monthly. A day has been insurmountable for me. So I usually now I call it a day, but it's really 2-3 hours. And again, my setup that helps me is I go to a coffee shop, I get out of my normal routine. I go, I get myself a nice coffee, and like 3 hours, I close my email and just do this thinking. But monthly has been helpful because I found my annual was great, but I couldn't wait a whole year to like make changes and implement. And just having this small window has been helpful. And then from a habit tracking book that we read I think in book club, they talk about making backup slots, because I also talk about all the time, I'm good at client work, bad at me work. So CEO day would be me work. Now I schedule not one CEO day, but 2 and sometimes 3. And I say like in my calendar, I time block it and I say like option 1, option 2, option 3. So if I have to delete it so I can take client calls on that day, in my calendar, I already have blocked out some other backup options. And that's helped me make sure that I'm doing this monthly. Wow, Mary, we could keep talking about growth. This is, I'm like,
We
these are
really
great questions.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we can transition though into our kind of our last big question, and we're projecting out here. So get ready, Logan. What are your growth goals for 2025?
Well, we're going to be embracing the mess, the mess of growth. That's really stuck with me these last few days. And as I've said, my word is refine. So my goal is not to do more, but to refine what I'm already doing, because I just think I'm pretty dang close to like where I really want to be and having what I feel like is a good me cadence for the year. And so that's kind of how I'm hoping to grow, is more just to, it's not dramatic, I guess. But looking to refine. And then if you had to do a SMART goal, I mean, I have 3 pillar clients at this point. I've already renewed, all of them verbally have renewed with me now in December for next year, which is mind blowing, honestly, for me. So potentially getting a 4th, but we'll see. Because those pillar clients they're bigger contracts, but they're also a lot of work. So that's like a softer growth goal for me. I'm more excited about refining what I'm already doing.
Way to make it, like, try to make it a SMART goal. Mine is not a SMART goal. My goals are rarely SMART goals, but that's okay. They motivate me still. So I would say my growth goal for 2025 is similar to yours, Logan. It is to do what we're already doing better or well. Like, yes, we could add on services, we can do these things, and maybe we will, but I really just want to really get better at the services that we're already providing. Like, what's one step further that we can take? Can we provide an additional template? Can we just do something like that to make it a little bit more of a value add? So that's, I think, what I really want to focus on, which I do think will help us grow. I think it'll help us retain and then hopefully grow as well. And I shared this yesterday, but I'll share it to this audience as well. So my phrase for 2025 is actually to do less. So growth, doing less. I still think that that's growth in a way, because you're kind of figuring out what to focus on. But yes, it is to do less well. So do less, comma, well. Like, yes. So to do less well. That's my goal.
Do it less, but do it well.
Yep,
Yes.
exactly.
And for those of you who asked questions that we didn't get to answer, we haven't forgotten you. We're going to make some into full-blown podcast episodes, so we're not going to leave you hanging. We also always do a lessons learned episode in January to kick off the new season, so you might get a couple of those things answered there as well. But Mary, I have our bonus tip this week. My bonus tip is to put your out of office in your email signature 2 to 3 months ahead of time. This is something that you need to be reiterating and telling your colleagues and your clients and anybody who is going to be impacted by it. But 1, you should be going out of the office. And 2, if you are going out, it doesn't hurt to reiterate it and reiterate your boundaries in your email signature. And so that's something that I am constantly looking at 2 to 3 months ahead of time, making sure it's in there. Again, I've not necessarily had clients call that out that they love or hate that I do that, but I found it's just helpful to reiterate when I'm going out of the office.
Great bonus tip, Logan. Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for listening to another week of the Better Events podcast. We are so thrilled that you took the time to be with us yet again this week. You can follow us and find us on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn at Better Events Pod. You can email us at bettereventspod@gmail.com. You can also connect with Logan and I directly on LinkedIn. We love to hear from you. Just send us a note that you listen to the podcast so we know who you are. And then thank you again. We will be back with you again next Wednesday.